Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by, and thanks for all your comments about the 3 large Miltoniopsis. All good answers, but some were at opposite ends of the scale, shall we say. There were many said, just repot them now and get it over and done with, give them a chance to recover before the heat arrives. Some suggested that it might be better to wait until the day lengths are up to their normal thing when they come back into more active growth. Both of those make sense. And others said, leave them alone, don't disturb them. That also makes sense. But others pointed out that, oh sorry, excuse the noise in the background, the washing machine's on, but I've got to go out in a minute, I need to get stuff done. And the fan's going to go on in a minute, so there's going to be even more noise. But yeah, some suggested just leave them alone. Others pointed out that if you think the media is starting to break down already because of the fact that they're not drying and they've got moss in there, then it's better to get on and do it. Many pointed out that Miltoniopsis do not like being disturbed. Well, eventually they have to be unless you use inorganic media, which is fine. Oh yeah, you would decide to empty and fill, wouldn't you? But one suggestion, only one, came up with, why don't you use perlite instead of moss? That way you're not having to refresh what is relatively expensive Orchiata bark anywhere near as often. Now there's a good reason why I stopped using the perlite, and that's because I never had the black pots around the edge, yeah? And as such, this stuff really is prone to algae. That gets it in the pot, and then it starts to spread around the edge of the pot and everything else. It just seems to be an algae magnet. But as I now keep my clear pots inside black pots to stop the algae, this comes back in. And this is quite a good replacement for moss. There is a downside, the downside being your media will dry a lot faster because it hasn't got the moss in it. Now this stuff originally came from the States. My friend Peter White used to import these packs from the States, but he had to stop doing it on the grounds that where he was getting it from said the only way we're going to export that to the UK is with a pallet load. And he said he'd be dead before he ever sold it all, so he gave up on it. So this is now unobtainable in the UK, and for some reason in the UK, possibly the rest of the EU, you can only buy very small sized perlite, which doesn't do as good a job because the surface area of the individual pieces is tiny compared with this stuff. Now this stuff, it says on here, expanded perlite is ultra lightweight, inert, sterile, permanent, incombustible, asbestos free, non-toxic, rot and vermin proof, and has a neutral pH. It doesn't sound like you can get anything better than that, but you have to bear in mind it is made of a glass based silicate, yeah, and it has dust. Breathing in that dust is dangerous because it cannot break down. If it gets inside your lungs, it's there for good, so you do not breathe the dust. So you have to take care when using it. It's as simple as that. Now this is effectively, it was classed as sponge rock. It's giant perlite, but therein lies the problem, the dust element. Now the easiest way to get round that is to very carefully take some out and wash it before you start using it and get the dust off. Put it in a strainer or something where the dust can be washed through. But avoid the dust at all costs. Now I've got another half bag of this somewhere, and I've got this. Bearing in mind these pieces in here, some of them are truly giant pieces that I would never use. A lot of the larger pieces would need to be broken down into smaller pieces to get a more average size. But my decision, back to these. First off, minus the black pot. Now in theory that would help them. I mean, look at that, that is absolutely dripping wet. Okay, it only got watered yesterday, but that is soggy, very soggy. and I've got to stop that, or that is potentially dangerous to the roots staying soggy. And the fact that they've been like this for some time now, probably since October, they've not been drying out very well, I would suggest that moss has broken down and is already starting to turn this pot quite acidic. Yeah, that's a no-no. Right, so the plan is soldering iron, make lots of air holes, carefully avoiding the roots I can actually see, so the holes will have to go round in the areas where there aren't any roots, so they're going to look awful because instead of having nice neat rows they're going to be all over the place. And leave the black pot off, yeah? So and I'll also leave the drip tray off, because these are now on a shelf with nothing underneath, so it doesn't matter if they drip after I've watered them. And that will allow air in. Let's see if I can tip this up without all the media coming out. These are all in air cone pots. These are good air cones, they're deep, many slats, so there's a good amount of air can get in the pot there. With the additional holes, I think these are going to start drying quite quickly. As far as a repot is concerned, at the moment I'm just going to say no, yeah, because once this starts drying a lot quicker, which it should do, the media will stop breaking down as fast. Now it may have already started, but that should slow it right down. And then the idea is I'll repot them when the day lengths are up to normal, which is sort of towards the end of February, so not too long. And with the drying in between, they'll put up with that. And then we'll repot minus the moss and use the perlite, or sponge rock as it's called in the States, instead. That will mean that the media in the pot is going to last a very long time, and they won't need disturbing again for some considerable time. Now I'm only going to film one of these because some may never have seen this idea, and I will have to turn the fan on because the soldering iron will burn the plastic and give off fumes, and I'd rather they went up through the filter than up my nose, quite honestly. So sorry about the noise, but that's how it goes. Right, and when I got the this particular soldering iron, I got one with a spade end rather than a pointy end. Yeah, the reason being I can twist that as I make the hole and make a much bigger hole than a pointy one does. So the idea is I don't need to go right to the top, I just need to sort of start part way down and just burn and twist and make a hole. You can see the fumes coming off, but I don't want those up my outer, I want them up through the filter. It's just a matter of going round, making a lot of air holes. That's all these are, but without damaging roots if possible. So only in places where there aren't any roots, in between the roots, preferably not sliding off and burning your fingers. So this is the general idea, as many holes as I can make without burning any roots if at all possible, which it seems to be okay. Of course this ruins the pot, it's only ever good for this sort of thing again, but it will have its uses. Other things may need a lot of air that still need to go in a pot. Now we've got a nice big space here. See, under normal circumstances, if you do this before the plant goes in, you can do your holes like that, in a nice neat row, and they do look an awful lot better. They almost look planned. There's a big bit of barking behind there. But obviously with roots already there, you've got to go careful where your holes go. In this area I'm not going to be able to get many holes in there because of the number of roots there are. Get one in between those, just about. There we go, I think that'll do. I don't want to go too mad and actually damage roots. There's a big bit there I can do. Yeah. So that's the general idea. And also, I was told last time I used this, if you get a wet cloth, as soon as you've finished, quickly wipe over that with the wet cloth and it stops it smoking. But if you see already that stopped smoking. Yeah. So put that back on the stand. I'm not going to burn myself. So that's the general idea. Make much better use of the air cone by not having a drip tray. Many ventilation holes, yeah, and get this to dry out. So we'll see. I watered this yesterday and it nearly didn't need any, but at the moment my pots are going about 10 days between waterings. Now they may have lasted another 10 days without needing water and also without getting totally dry because of how they were, but I didn't want to take the risk, so they had a little bit of water, which has now made them very wet. The time before, 10 days before, they didn't get water because they were still wet. So they hadn't had any water for 20 days and were still quite moist. That's what's got to stop. So given whatever the day is today, Thursday, once I've finished all these holes, I'll check on them every few days and see how long they take to dry out with no drip tray and no black cover, and see if it changes dramatically, which I'm hoping it will. And then probably in 5 or 6 weeks time I will seriously think about repotting and replacing the moss with the perlite, and that way they can stay in their pots for an awful long time, and they should have actively growing roots at that point. And in addition to that, they'll be coming into their correct day length, but preceding the heat building up in the grow room, the summer heat. So they should get time to establish before they get that heat stress. And providing the roots are good and they're happy in their media and it's not acidic, the heat is less damaging than it would have been otherwise. Any form of stress with these is not good. Multiple stresses will just take the plant down. So allowing it to totally dry when it shouldn't do, keeping it too warm, not enough humidity, too much light, too little light, you name it, it stresses these. So the idea is to minimise the number of stresses to one at a time, if at all possible. So that's the plan. So thanks for all your ideas and comments, and quite honestly, most of them have been incorporated, apart from those that said repot now. Those are the only ones I'm not doing. I'm delaying that one thing. But most of the other ideas have been taken on board. And I'll monitor the progress of the drying, because that's all I'm interested in at the moment, is getting these to dry much faster. I'd be happy if I had to water these every 3 or 4 days because they were nearly dry. I'd be much happier. I doubt if that's going to happen because we're in quite a cold snap at the moment, so we've got very low temperatures at night. But we'll see how it goes. Anyway, again, thanks for your ideas, and that's what I'm doing about them. See you next time.